Judges chapters 6-8, 2 of 3. Gideon repudiates Baal, Israel called to arms. Then Gideon built an altar there unto the Lord, and called it Jehovah Shalom. Unto this day, it is yet an offer of the Abiezrites. And it came to pass the same night, that the Lord said unto him, Take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath, and cut down the grove that is by it, and build an altar unto the Lord thy God upon the top of this rock, in the ordered place, and take the second bullock, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove which thou shalt cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants, and did as the Lord had said unto him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household, and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day, that he did it by night. Judges 6:24-27. And so Gideon begins his adventure. Even with God's commission he is still afraid. Instead of obeying God in the bold daylight, he does it under the cover of darkness. But they find out who did it, and they are ready to execute Gideon. But God again delivers him. Gideon is still hesitant. God has to overcome the fear. God has to develop courage and faith. God has to strengthen Gideon's feeble knees. It is a patient, long ordeal. The next step is to fill this man with his Spirit. God has always given a filling of the Spirit to the man that he uses. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abiezer was gathered after him. Judges 6:34. The blowing of the trumpet meant war. The minute he blew the trumpet, his people knew it meant war against the Amalekites, and they began to gather unto him. Do you know what happened? Gideon got cold feet and went back to the Lord with a proposition. And Gideon said unto God, If thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor, and if the dew be on the fleece only, and it be dry upon all the earth beside, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. And it was so, for he rose up early on the morrow, and thrust the fleece together, and wringed the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Judges 6:36-38. The next day Gideon went back, and I am of the opinion that he intended to do this all the time, regardless of the outcome of the first test, because if you put out a fleece here in California it would be damp, whereas the ground would be dry. He gave a two-way test that could not be gainsaid. He said, Now, Lord, I will put out the fleece again. If you are really in this thing, put the dew around everywhere else and let the fleece remain dry. I am glad he did it that way because, frankly, I would be skeptical enough to believe it just happened the first time. Or let us say that it was natural for it to happen one way, but it was supernatural for it to happen the other way. This man asked God to put dew on the fleece, and then for God not to put dew on the fleece. How gracious God was to Gideon. We will find that God will gradually school this man, until he brings him to the place where Gideon can see that there is nothing in him. Then God will use him to win a mighty battle. Now, looking back at verses 34 and 35, we see that men for his army had come to him from everywhere. When a trumpet is blown in Israel, it means war. And frankly, friend, he was the last man you would want to gather around. He certainly was not a man prepared to lead them into battle. So God begins to move in this man's life in a definite way, as we shall see in chapter 7. 300 alert soldiers are chosen. Then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and all the people that were with him, rose up early, and pitched beside the well of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh, in the valley. And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, Mine own hand hath saved me. Judges 7:1-2. Now Gideon goes out and looks at his army. He had 32,000 men, and the thought in Gideon's mind is that this is not enough. The Midianites were like grasshoppers on the hills. They were disorganized, but by sheer numbers they would have overcome the Israelites. Therefore, his men were too few, and I think Gideon was ready to blow the trumpet again. But God said to Gideon, You have too many men. I cannot give you the victory with 32,000 men, because you would boast and say that you did it in your own strength, power and might. No flesh is going to glory in God's presence. That is the reason God has to use weak instruments today. This is the method he continues to follow. He is going to cut down the number of the army. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 20 and 2,000, and there remained 10,000, Judges 7:3. Gideon had 32,000 men, and now he has lost 22,000 of them. You may recall God's condition, as put down in the Mosaic system in the book of Deuteronomy, that if anyone was drafted into the army and was afraid, he could go home. I have often wondered why Gideon did not go home. When he said, All of you who are fearful and afraid, he could have said, Follow me, because I am going home. I am more afraid than anyone here. He had to stay, however. God had commissioned him. Now Gideon has only 10,000 men, and that is enough to make anyone afraid. But God says, Really, you still have too many men. You have to reduce this number. I cannot give you victory with this number of men in your army. So Gideon and his men went through another test. So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, Every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise every one that gets down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men, but all the rest of the people got down upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, By the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go every man unto his place. Judges 7:5-7. Do you know what we have here? It is one of the finest lessons concerning divine election and man's free will. This is the way they work together. God said to Gideon, I am going to choose the men that I want to go with you, but the way I will do it, is to let them make the choice. Bring them down to the water, and the ones who lap water like a dog, just going through and throwing it into their mouths, are the ones I have chosen. You can put aside those men who get down on all fours and take their time drinking. I don't want them. Had we been there, ours is a great day for interviewing the man on the street. We could have had interviews with the men in Gideon's army. For example, let us take the man that is down on all fours. We would go up to him and say, Brother, why did you get down on all fours? Well, he would reply, I was just wondering why I didn't go home with the other crowd. I have been thinking this thing over, and I have a wife and family, and I just do not think I ought to be here. I feel like I should have gone home. I have no heart for this. He made his choice, but God also made his choice. That is divine election and human free will. You see, God elects, but he lets you be the one to make the choice. Then we go to the man that lapped water like a dog, and went to the other side of the stream. Why did you lap water like that? We ask him. He says, Where are the Midianites? Wait just a minute, we reply. Why did you do that? He replies, Because I am with Gideon 100%. May I say to you, that these 300 men had a heart for battle. If you had said to any one of these 300 men, say, Did you know that God has elected you? He would have replied, I don't know what you are talking about. The thing is, that I want to go after these Midianites. You can argue about divine election and free will, all you want to, but it works. You cannot make it work out by arguing, but it sure works out in life, friend. Each one of the 10,000 men in Gideon's army exercised his free will. God did not interfere with one of them as far as their free wills were concerned. Today God, through his Son Jesus Christ, offers you the free gift of salvation. It is a legitimate offer. It is a sincere offer from God himself. He says, All that the Father giveth me shall come to me, and him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out. John 6:37. Now don't tell me that you can argue about election right now. You cannot. You can come to God if you want to come. If you don't come, I have news for you. You are not elected. If you do come, I have good news for you. You are elected. That is the way God moves. Now these 300 men often have been misunderstood. As a student, I went down to a little church in Georgia. When I got there, a dear little lady wearing a sunbonnet said to me, Mr. McGee, we have here just a little Gideon's band. They didn't have a Gideon's band. They had the most discouraged, lazy folk I have ever seen in my life. That is not Gideon's band. Gideon's band was a group of dedicated men, willing to die to deliver Israel, men who had their hearts and souls in this matter. May I say to you, that these men lapped up water like a dog, because they were after the Midianites and not after water. They will drink after the battle is over. I once watched a football game, and then I listened to the interview of the quarterback of the Arkansas team. Even after the game, he was so excited and so emotional that he took no credit for himself. He gave his team the credit for winning. He said, "We were determined to win." That is Gideon's band, friend, and that is the thing that is needed today in the church, if you please.